Professor Zyxnax adjusted his oculars nervously as he peered out at the assembled students. The lecture hall of the Galactic University of Xenobiology buzzed with anticipation. It was the first day of the most challenging course in the curriculum, Extreme Survival Classroom 101. Greetings, sentients. Zyxnax began, his tentacles rippling in what his species considered a welcoming gesture. Welcome to what will undoubtedly be the most grueling academic experience of your lives. A collective shudder ran through the room. Well, almost collective. In the back row, two bipedal creatures seemed oddly relaxed. Zyxnax's compound eyes narrowed. Ah yes, the transfer students from that backwater planet. What was it called again? Dirt? Earth? Something like that. This course, Zyxnax continued, will push you to your absolute limits. You will face simulations of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy. Your goal is simple. Survive. He paused for dramatic effect, expecting gasps of terror. Instead, one of the Earth students raised a hand. Excuse me, Professor? The male human called out, a strange upturn to his mouth. When you say hostile environments, what exactly do you mean? Zyxnax blinked all four of his eyes in succession. Was that excitement in the creature's voice? Well, he replied, somewhat thrown off. We'll start with basic hazards. Extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, high-gravity worlds. Then we'll move on to more, shall we say, active threats. The human's facial expression grew even more unsettling. He was showing teeth now, lots of them. Zyxnax made a mental note to research Earth facial expressions later. Active threats? The female human piped up. Like, creatures trying to eat us and stuff? Precisely, Zyxnax confirmed. Regaining his composure. The galaxy is full of predators that would love nothing more than to make a meal out of unprepared explorers. To his growing confusion, the two humans exchanged looks of what appeared to be glee. The male even pumped a fist in the air. Awesome, he whispered, though Zyxnax's sensitive auditory receptors picked it up easily. This was not the reaction he had expected. Every year, this course drove at least half the class to drop out within the first week. These Earth creatures should be trembling in fear, not whatever this was. Little did Professor Zyxnax know, but he was about to learn a very important lesson. Never underestimate a species that evolved on a death world. The first simulation was scheduled for the following day. As the class filed out, chattering nervously among themselves, Zyxnax couldn't help but notice the two humans hanging back, huddled in excited conversation. Alex, this is going to be just like that survival reality show back home, the girl exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I know, right, Zoe? Alex replied, grinning from ear to ear. Think they'll let us build shelters? Hope so. I've got some new knots I've been dying to try out. Zyxnax's tentacles curled in confusion. What had he gotten himself into? The next day, as the class gathered in the holographic simulation chamber, tension hung thick in the air. Most students were visibly trembling, their various appendages quivering in anticipation of the horrors to come. Alex and Zoe, however, stood out like a pair of supernovas in a sea of dying stars, practically bouncing on the balls of their feet. All right, class, Professor Zyxnax announced, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. Today's simulation will test your ability to survive in an environment of extreme cold. You will be transported to a virtual recreation of the ice planet Glacios 9. Your task is to survive for 24 hours. Use whatever resources you can find. And remember, in a real situation, there are no second chances. With a dramatic flourish of his tentacles, Zyxnax activated the simulator. The sterile white room shimmered and transformed into a vast, frozen wasteland. Howling winds whipped snow through the air, and the temperature plummeted instantly to well below freezing. Most of the alien students immediately huddled together, their bodies ill-equipped for such brutal cold. But Alex and Zoe? They whooped with joy. "This is amazing!" Zoe shouted over the wind, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "It's just like that winter camping trip in Alaska." Alex nodded enthusiastically, already scanning their surroundings. "Look over there," he pointed. "Those ice formations could provide some shelter. Let's go." As the pair trudged through the snow with practiced ease, Professor Zyxnax watched in bewilderment from his control panel. These humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Over the next few hours, Zyxnax observed with increasing astonishment as Alex and Zoe not only built a sturdy ice shelter but also managed to start a fire using nothing but ice, a curved piece of scrap metal they'd found, and the local equivalent of sun. "It's all about the lens effect," Alex explained to a group of shivering alien students who had gravitated towards their warm shelter. "You can focus the sunlight to create heat, even in a place as cold as this." Zoe, meanwhile, had fashioned crude but effective snow goggles for everyone using strips of bark from a frozen tree-like organism. "Trust me," she said. "Snow blindness is no joke. These will protect your eyes from the glare." By the time the 24-hour mark rolled around, Alex and Zoe had not only ensured their own survival, but had also taught valuable skills to half the class. As the simulation faded away, returning them to the sterile white room, Professor Zyxnax was flabbergasted. How did you do that?" he sputtered, his tentacles writhing in confusion. Alex and Zoe exchanged a look. "Well, sir," Zoe began, "where we come from, this is just a typical winter day in some parts." "Yeah," Alex chimed in. "I mean, this was basically a walk in the park compared to the time I got lost in the Rockies during a blizzard." Zyxnax's oculars widened to their fullest extent. "You mean, your planet regularly experiences such conditions?" The humans nodded casually, as if discussing something as mundane as the color of the sky. "Fascinating," Zyxnax muttered. "Simply fascinating. Well, prepare yourselves for tomorrow. We'll be simulating the volcanic moon of Pyroclastia. Temperatures hot enough to melt lead, toxic gases, and unstable terrain. Surely that will prove more challenging." As the professor turned away, still shaking his head in disbelief, Alex and Zoe bumped fists. "Volcanic moon?" Alex whispered excitedly. "Dude, remember that time we went volcano boarding in Nicaragua?" Zoe's eyes lit up. "Oh yeah, this is going to be epic." Little did they know, their Deathworld upbringing was about to turn the entire curriculum of Extreme Survival Classroom 101 on its head. The next day, the class gathered once again in the simulation chamber. This time, the air was thick with apprehension and the acrid smell of fear pheromones from various alien species. Professor Zyxnax stood before them, his tentacles twitching with barely contained excitement. "Today," he announced, his voice resonating with grim satisfaction, "we tackle the volcanic hell's cape of Pyroclastia, temperatures that can melt your exoskeletons, toxic fumes that can dissolve your respiratory systems, and terrain as unstable as a Quiverian mood swing. Your goal is to reach the extraction point 10 kilometers away. You have 6 hours. Good luck." As the simulation shimmered to life around them, most students immediately collapsed, overwhelmed by the brutal assault on their senses. The ground beneath their feet bubbled and hissed, plumes of noxious gas erupted from fissures, and in the distance, a massive volcano belched flames into the ash-choked sky. Alex and Zoe, however, were grinning like kids in a candy store. "Oh man," Alex breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "This is even better than Hawaii." Zoe nodded enthusiastically, already pulling off her outer layer of clothing. "Quick, we need to fashion some kind of breathing apparatus. This air is nasty." As the other students floundered and gasped, the two humans sprang into action. Using strips of their shirts and some fibrous plants they found growing in the cracks between lava flows, they crafted crude but effective filtration masks. "All right, listen up," Zoe called out to the struggling aliens. "We need to move fast and stick together. See how the gas tends to sink? We'll try to stay on higher ground as much as possible." Alex, meanwhile, had found a large, flat piece of cooled lava rock. "Guys, I've got our ticket out of here. Who's up for some extreme volcano boarding? From his observation room, Professor Zyxnax watched in utter disbelief as the two humans not only navigated the lethal terrain with ease but seemed to be actively enjoying themselves. They surfed down lava flows on their makeshift board, using their momentum to cross vast distances quickly. When they encountered a field of geysers, instead of cowering in fear, they turned it into a game, timing their runs between eruptions and using the steam vents to propel themselves forward. Even more astonishing was how they rallied the other students. Species that would normally be mortal enemies found themselves working together under the humans' guidance. A Vrexian ice slug and a Pyronian flame beetle collaborated to create a cooling system for their more heat-sensitive classmates. A group of telepathic gas bags from Nebula 9 formed a floating communication relay, helping coordinate movements across the treacherous landscape. As they neared the extraction point, with time to spare, Alex turned to Zoe with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Hey, want to take a detour? That volcano looks climbable." Zoe's response was to break into a run towards the mountainous inferno, whooping with joy. Professor Zyxnax's many eyes bulged as he watched the humans scale the active volcano, dodging lava bombs and toxic vents with practiced ease. By the time they reached the extraction point, not only had they completed the challenge in record time, but they had also collected samples of rare minerals, cataloged several undiscovered species of extremophile life forms, and left a clear trail for the rest of the class to follow. As the simulation faded away, the lecture hall was filled not with the expected groans of pain and defeat, but with excited chatter and even a few tentative cheers. Species that had entered as strangers were now bonding over their shared survival experience. Alex and Zoe high-fived each other, their faces streaked with soot and sweat but beaming with exhilaration. Professor Zyxnax approached them, his tentacles drooping in bewilderment. I don't understand," he stammered. "This simulation has a 90% failure rate. How did you not only survive but excel?" Alex shrugged. "Honestly, Prof, this was like a typical summer back home. You should see Yellowstone during tourist season." "Yeah," Zoe chimed in. "Or try navigating downtown New York during rush hour. Now that's a survival challenge." Zyxnax's color shifted rapidly, a sign of intense cognitive dissonance in his species. But, the heat, the toxic air, the constant threat of death at every turn. How can any species evolve in such conditions? The humans exchanged a knowing look. "Well, sir," Alex began, "let us tell you about a little planet called Earth." As Alex and Zoe launched into a description of their homeworld, complete with its myriad of lethal environments and the many ways humans had adapted to survive and thrive in them, Professor Zyxnax felt his understanding of the universe fundamentally shift. These humans, these Deathworlders, weren't just surviving his course. They were rewriting it. And as he listened to their tales of blizzards and deserts, of deep-sea trenches and mountain peaks, of bustling cities and untamed wildernesses, a new respect began to grow in him. Perhaps, he mused, it was time to update the curriculum. After all, if these were the kinds of challenges that forged a species like humanity, what else might the galaxy have in store? Word of the humans' extraordinary performance spread through the university faster than a Laminian thought virus. Within days, the corridors were abuzz with rumors and speculation about the mysterious Deathworlders, who had not only survived but thrived in conditions that would reduce most sentient beings to puddles of terrified protoplasm. Alex and Zoe found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of attention. Students from all corners of the galaxy sought them out, eager to learn more about their methods, their planet, and their seemingly impossible biology. "Is it true that you breathe corrosive gas?" a wide-eyed Methanian asked Alex one day between classes. Alex chuckled. "Well, we do breathe oxygen, which is pretty reactive, but it's not exactly corrosive to us." "And your planet?" a shimmering Laminian interjected, its thought patterns tinged with awe. "I heard it's covered in dihydrogen monoxide." "You mean water?" Zoe replied, trying to hide her amusement. "Yeah, about 71% of our surface." The gathered aliens collectively shuddered at the thought of so much of the dangerous substance in one place. Meanwhile, Professor Zyxnax was facing a different kind of challenge. The dean of Xenobiology, a towering Arcturian named Jorpazorp, had summoned him to explain the unprecedented success rates in his usually devastating course. Zwaxnax, the dean's voice boomed, rattling the crystals that served as his equivalent of teeth. Your last class had a 98% survival rate. The Galactic Board of Education is breathing down my tentacles. What in the name of the cosmic egg is going on? Zwaxnax's tentacles writhed nervously. Well, you see, sir, it's these new transfer students. The humans. They're different. Different how? Jorpazorp demanded. They're from a planet that makes our survival simulations look like a relaxing day at a spore spa, Zwaxnax explained. They call it Earth. The dean's crystalline structure pulsed with skepticism. Impossible. No sentient species could evolve in such conditions. That's what I thought too, Zwaxnax admitted. But then I did some research. Dean, you won't believe what I found out about their planet. Over the next hour, Zwaxnax regaled the dean with tales of Earth's extremes. He spoke of oceans deep enough to crush starships, of winds that could level cities, of temperature ranges that swung wildly from scorching heat to freezing cold. He described predators that would give nightmares to the fiercest Zorgan warriors, and microscopic organisms capable of bringing entire civilizations to their knees. By the end of his recitation, the dean's crystals had paled to a ghostly white. And these humans, he whispered, they survive in these conditions? Survive, Zwaxnax replied, his voice tinged with wonder. Sir, they thrive in them. They've turned their death world into a cradle of innovation and adaptation. And now, they're teaching our students to do the same. The dean was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form shimmering as he processed this information. Finally, he spoke. Zwaxnax, I believe it's time we made some changes to our curriculum. In the weeks that followed, the Galactic University of Xenobiology underwent a transformation. New courses appeared on the roster: Deathworld Ecology 101, Adaptive Physiology in Extreme Environments, and Terran Survival Techniques became instant hits among the student body. Alex and Zoe found themselves recruited as teaching assistants, helping to bridge the gap between their earthly experiences and the alien perspectives of their classmates. They set up Earth Day challenges, where students could attempt to navigate simulations of rush hour traffic, wilderness camping, and even a recreated Black Friday sale at a mall. The results were both hilarious and heartening. Methanian gas bags learned to swim through Earth's dense atmosphere, while Arcturian crystal beings developed flexible outer layers to cope with the constant temperature changes. A group of Zorgan warriors, initially dismissive of primitive human martial arts, found themselves humbled and fascinated by the adaptability of Earth's fighting styles. But perhaps the most profound change was in the university's approach to interspecies cooperation. Inspired by Alex and Zoe's knack for turning diverse groups into effective teams, the faculty began emphasizing collaborative problem-solving across species lines. One day, as Alex and Zoe watched a mixed group of aliens successfully complete a simulated Earth mountain rescue, Professor Zwaxnax approached them. You know, he said, his tentacles curling thoughtfully, when you first arrived, I thought you were going to be the death of me. Instead, you've breathed new life into this entire institution. Zoe grinned. Well, Prof, that's kind of our thing. Turning deadly situations into opportunities for growth. Yeah, Alex added with a chuckle. On Earth, we call it making lemonade out of lemons. Zwaxnax's oculars blinked in confusion. Lemons? Are those some kind of deadly Earth projectile? As Alex and Zoe dissolved into laughter, trying to explain the concept of sour fruit to their bewildered professor, they couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had come to this alien university to learn, but in the process they had become the teachers. And in doing so, they had opened up a whole new universe of possibilities, not just for themselves, but for every species in the galaxy.